Thanks for listening to the Open Discourse podcast. In this series, ODC co-founder and CEO Charles Mitchell sits down for a candid conversation with thought leaders, elected officials, entrepreneurs, and more. Today, he is joined by Rob Shearer, president of the Shearer Group of Companies.
Rob Shearer, president of the Shearer Group of Companies, thank you so much for being my guest on the Open Discourse Coalition podcast.
Great to be with you, sir.
You and your wife, Deborah, inaugurated a new batch of programming for the Open Discourse Coalition earlier this year, our new Faith, Family, and Business series. This came in response to students who told me and the rest of our team they know intuitively there must be some connections among those three things, faith, family, and business, but there wasn't a place for them to suss it all out. So we made a place.
Right.
We tried it out last spring. It was a fabulous evening, and so the series is going to continue at Bucknell this fall and maybe expand to other universities next year. Pretty cool thing you got to be there at the beginning.
That's awesome.
Let's start by discussing the third of those three things, business.
Yes, sir.
Some of the people associated with ODC have what I would call household name businesses, Goldman Sachs, Home Depot, stuff like that. The Shearer Group of Companies is not a household name.
Right.
But its scope and its complexity are surprising to most people. Now, the way I would summarize it is that you do highly complex logistics all around the world, but you should speak for yourself. So first, Rob, what business are you in and what is its scope?
Yeah, we're in logistics and supply chain management, and our clientele tend to be organizations that have a fair amount of complexity in their supply chain as well, and a complexity driven by compliance and regulatory environment that they work in. And we're specialists at that. And yes, you're right. We're not a household name, but we've been at it. I'm a fourth generation of our family business. We've been at it since the 1920s, and when my great-grandfather started with a motorcycle and a sidecar. And
so from a motorcycle and a sidecar to where do you operate in the world today?
Most every place in the world. Now, I don't own operations all over the world, but we've got a network that we have fostered for the last 80 years.
And your logistics is complex. What are a couple examples of the complex things that you move?
So one of our divisions is medical devices, and our clients in that space are typically medical device manufacturers. So the regulatory environment, of course, is FDA and quite a number of other. Every state has medical device regulatory environment, so there's some level of complexity. But the devices themselves are high value and sensitive and require calibration and require special handling, special warehousing, special environments with temperature and humidity, things like that. So we're not just shipping boxes, we're not dropping it off on people's doorsteps. We are doing things that FedEx and UPS would not do for a highly specialized. So one example would be medical devices. Another big area of focus for us would be government, space, and defense. So many times that's military hardware of various sorts. Sometimes it's not. It might be more generic, but things that are used for a government, space, or defense use, and that means there, again, a lot of regulatory, a lot of certain ways you have to do it, lots of special handling, lots of special requirements, not just in this country, but any country in the world where we're trying to connect with. It might surprise you to know that we're one of the largest shippers into Djibouti, of all places in the world. So somebody's got to do it.
The only thing I know about Djibouti is that it was in the Bugs Bunny cartoons when I was growing up. What about fighter planes?
Yeah, we have a client that specializes in training NATO pilots. And so what they will sometimes do is they will sometimes purchase aircraft that has been used by one of the allied world militaries, bring them to the United States. We do that logistics piece. Now you might say, well, why don't they just fly it? Well, it's actually a lot more expensive to have to refuel mid-ocean than it would be to take it apart, put it on a boat, and ship it into the U.S., and that's kind of what we do. So from anywhere in the world where it may happen to be located, we'll bring it into the U.S. and take it all the way to Arizona where they do the training.
Fascinating. One of the things I often think about is there's a lot of people in the world that are business people. Not all of them are entrepreneurs.
Right.
Are you more a businessman or are you more an entrepreneur?
Gosh, it's a great question. I'd like to think that you're effective when you have a decent balance of those things. But the reality is that I'm probably more of an entrepreneur because I tend to get bored doing the same thing over and over again. So I tend to, go seek out opportunities to expand. It's not uncommon for me to have conversations with my clients about, yeah, we got that covered, but what else can we do? And, deepen the sources of the revenue streams, as I like to tell my people. To me, that's just interesting. Now, the business side is, and I said we have to have a good balance. You really do. You've got to be able to run a good ship. There are plenty of folks out there that struggle on one side or the other, and that creates a lot of friction within the organization. So I think one of the things about this is at least my opinion about being good at being an entrepreneur and a businessman is you really need to be self-critical. You need to periodically step back and question, why do we do things that way? How can we drive a better result? How can we be more efficient at things? You frequently have to recalibrate, and you have to be very comfortable in that. And that because there's always tension in that recalibration, but you have to be comfortable doing it.
Maybe that bridges naturally to the second word in our series, family. Because my observation, at least knowing your nuclear family and a little bit of previous generations, is part of how you manage the business is you are in business with your wife.
Yes.
Your wife, Deb, was part of the program at Bucknell. As I understand it, your son, Nick, is moving back to Pennsylvania and is looking to join the family business.
That's right.
Your daughter, Caroline, is elsewhere. We'll see if we can get her back to Pennsylvania. But one of the things that I observed when you and Deb spoke on campus is students were very interested in how your marital relationship translated into business. So could you say a little bit about that?
Yeah, because, it's not uncommon to hear people make comments like, oh, my, family business is tough, and I could never work with my spouse. And I think but if you think about it, for millennia, husbands and wives worked together as a team to make something happen, right? Whether it was managing the farm or their homestead or whatever it might be. So you find a way, especially if you are a pair of people, if you are a couple that is like-minded about, well, why are we doing this? So you have to agree on the why first. Yes, the students were very interested in this. I think in the same way that students have been very interested in trying to understand the family dynamic in general and to really say, what's my path forward with family? Now, for some folks, that may not include doing business. I mean, honestly, when Deborah and I got married, we didn't have any intention of working together in a business. But fate intervened a few times and made it seem like the right thing to do, and it turned out to be a really good, true partnership on a lot of levels. And we've been doing it now for, 22 years, I think. We've been married for 30. So those first few years, we weren't working together. And honestly, we had to learn how to do it. What I said to the students is we had to learn how to do that. I mean, that's not necessary, especially in a business environment. It's maybe one thing if we're talking about the family garden, but it's another thing when you're talking about dealing with employees and insurance and facilities and all those things. So we had to learn how to do it. The first year wasn't the easiest thing we've ever done because here's the thing: you have to learn how to have a different conversation with, in my case, with my wife. I have to have a different conversation. There's one way you might tackle something at the house, and there's another way you tackle something in business. And it requires some strategic thought. It requires take a step back, think it through. Now, we've done some practical things too, Charles, to help us, like, for example, in our building here in our headquarters, her office is on one end of the building and mine is on the other.
And why is that?
We have very different skill sets. It allows her to manage her team the way that works very well for her, that matches her skill set. I mean, she's an engineer. She is analytical and methodical. She's very detail oriented. I am very big picture, entrepreneurial, dealing with the management of the business operations. We have different responsibilities, and that's really good. Because if we were trying to do the same thing every day and we're stepping over each other and maybe having a disagreement about how to do those things, that might be tougher.
My observation, knowing you these many years, is that being in business with your wife has been good for your business and good for your marriage.
I agree.
Why?
Well, good for the business because she's good at what she does. And I think I'm pretty decent at what I do. Put those two things together. And it's funny too. She'll tell you stories that it's not uncommon we'll be in a conference room with a client, maybe together, and they're surprised when they find out that we're married because we don't act like a married couple when we're working.
I thought it was because they were surprised you married so far up.
That's probably more the truth. That's probably. But
you and I have that in common as well.
We certainly do. Yes. Yeah, I'd say we've won the lottery in that regard.
Yes.
Very patient, tolerant wife that I have. The skill sets are different. We don't compete with each other. We're trying to complement each other.
Yeah.
And that's something we have to be intentional about.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good lesson, frankly, for young people about considering marriage. I'll put it to you this way. One of the things being in business with my wife taught me was even when you have conflict, the job of your spouse is to help to lift you up. My responsibility is to make her the best person she can be, as hers is to make me the best person I can be. Ultimately, we're both trying to get to heaven, and we're trying to bring as many people with us as we can. As Erica Kirk said, let's make it crowded. You know, I think that's a good mission to have. So I'm going to hope that she will, when she sees me heading in the wrong direction, call it out, but in a loving way. And the same thing, vice versa, right? And those are the kind of conversations you have to learn to have at first. It's a little different than your married conversation, but maybe not wholly different because in marriage, you kind of want to do the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's beautiful. Another thing I remember the students being very interested in from both you and Deb is the priority of your marriage. I think you really spoke in two directions. One about how you prioritize it vis-a-vis business, vis-a-vis everything else in your life. And also something of a countercultural idea for a lot of young people today that you guys are glad you got married and like think it's a good thing.
Absolutely.
And even that is a thing that people don't always say out loud on a college campus. So maybe just review a little bit more of that, Rob. What did you say to the students in terms of the priority of marriage in your life, and also what struck you about the way they responded?
Yeah, that was a powerful piece of the discussion. It was good for me to hear that was important to them. So here's how I think about it, and I've no better than to try to put words in Deborah's mouth. So I'll have to have you recall what she said. But what I thought about when about the question is, first of all, the marriage is a primary relationship. It is absolutely critical, both from a family standpoint and from a business standpoint, that she and I are as much in alignment as we can be. Now, it doesn't mean you agree on everything. That will never happen, right? We will always have our disagreements, but it's kind of how you work through those things and how we arrive at the best solution. And I'm particularly bad at this. I constantly have to push myself. You have to be very comfortable with a difficult conversation, and you have to force yourself to have that difficult conversation when you're tired and when you've had a long day, and you still need to say, okay, we've got 5 more things that you and I need to resolve after what happened today about X, Y, Z, right? But being able to have some time in your day where you switch from colleagues to husband and wife. And how smoothly you can switch between those modes. First of all, you got to learn to do that. It's tough. It's not easy, but it's necessary. And I can never forget that regardless of which mode I happen to have my head in at the time, she may be in a different place. And so I need to be comfortable. So prioritizing the marriage, prioritizing the communication, and one thing Deborah and I think we said this during the talk with the students. I'm the guy who comes home at the end of the day, and I don't really particularly want to talk about it all. Like I like to go find a quiet place, kind of let off some steam and relax and think about something else for a while. It doesn't make me feel better to talk about, but in Deb's case and some people's case, it makes them feel better to talk. That's how they sort through things. They want to talk about it. So being tolerant with each other about your different styles of dealing with those things is important and critical. But the start of your question was the prioritization of the marriage. The marriage is more important than any of the business stuff. And you got to remind yourself of that sometimes because, of course, in the business stuff, you could have a situation, an agreement, disagreement, a situation with employees. You could have anything going on that you will intuitively perceive as a threat. Recognizing and prioritizing the marriage first, and then flowing from that, hopefully good decision making at the business level. That's the trick, and that's the part where we have to be very intentional when we talk about it.
How old were you and Deb when you got married?
I was 26 or 27. She was 23, I think. Yeah.
Did you think twice about getting married in today's terms at a young age versus before you got started in business or anything like that?
Accounting for the cultural difference in the last 30 years, I felt like I was probably at the right age, and I think she felt like she was ready. I don't know if then we would have thought that was particularly young, because you think about it, my parents were married much younger than that, as was common maybe in their era.
The scale has changed.
The Overton window has shifted just a bit, right? But having said that, I would say for me, by the age of 27, I was certainly ready for that kind of relationship and ready to be committed to it. It was interesting that the way the students asked about that, and that is a concern for them. And what I see with my children and their friends is I see a real mix. I see some folks certainly waiting and getting married later, really working hard to find the right person. And then I see some folks who get married quite young, maybe younger than is typical these days. I guess the truth of that is at the core of it, you got to know when you're ready. You got to know when you found that person. And, part of the way you know when you find that person is this somebody that you can see a lifetime journey with? Number one. Number two, is this somebody that that is going to make you a better person, that is going to, and that you feel comfortable doing the same.
Beautiful. So we've worked through 2 out of our 3 words. We got business, we got family. Now we're back to the first of our 3, faith. What kind of faith do you have? And how does your faith rank among your priorities?
Yeah, faith is a daily exercise. Faith is crucial to my daily operation. Faith is crucial to my bearing in the world. Faith is crucial to where we're going in general. So let me clarify what all that means. So we're Catholic. We practice the faith. The practice of that faith entails, of course, the very personal, spiritual side. Also, a lot of things we do publicly. And yes, there's the going to church, and there's being part of a faith community. We started a Catholic high school in our hometown, and that's an outgrowth of what we think our mission is, what God has called us to do as responsible citizens who've been given some gifts. And I think as I've gotten older, I think one of the things that is absolutely different now than it might have been 20 years ago is my comfort in doing what I would call kind of a soft evangelization. And that takes on a few forms. I think one is there's always the question of just being who you are, being comfortable with that, and allowing people to observe, they seem to be good at what they're doing, and they're very comfortable. Like, they're not afraid to talk to me about God, about faith, about theology, and its impact on the decisions we make every day. I would say absolutely I'm more comfortable in a bit of a evangelical role in terms of just showing how that's integrated in my daily life. And I think when we talk to the students, for example, that was one of the messages I really wanted to get across to them is don't alter who you are because of the crowd you happen to be in right at this moment. If you truly believe that somebody could benefit from understanding who Jesus Christ is, then say the word, and throw down some breadcrumbs that they can follow, right? I think that, and don't be afraid of that, because honestly, if they have any respect for you whatsoever, then the fact that is an important part of your life could be something that they're searching for too. There are so many people out there today who maybe haven't been well formed in the faith and are searching and are wanting something better and deeper and more, and it ultimately, what I was really impressed with the young people and their questions, clearly they're searching for answers to, what is my purpose? What is my purpose in life? Why is there this creation? What should my relationship with God be? Is there a God? All those fundamental things. Is not at that age, college age especially, it's not unusual to ask those questions. I would say when I was their age, I would say it was partially formed. I had a general idea, but over the years and the importance of continually feeding your faith life, and it's not just about reading the Bible, although that's certainly critically important. It's supplementing that with continuous learning and continuous growth. Spirituality is not something that somebody sprinkles some pixie dust on you and suddenly, I've got a perfectly formed faith life. No, it takes daily focus and work and attention, because these things come to you over time.
There's so much in there that I want to know more about, Rob. You mentioned the students' reaction to what you shared. You've shared just in this conversation a pretty good, I think, summary of what you and Deb had to say that night. I've been with you at enough cocktail parties since then to know that night was affecting not just for the students, but for you.
Oh, yeah.
What do you remember most fondly about that experience, and especially about the way the students reacted to an open and public discussion of these topics?
Yeah, I've got several things to say there. First, I think it was pretty clear that they were almost relieved to have an opportunity to talk about these sort of topics, that they maybe don't feel like they always have that chance. And so there was just being able to talk about it openly, ask a hard question. This has been bugging me. What's your take on this? I think a related thing too is, they're maybe searching for mentorship. They're searching for role models in a way, people that clearly are doing it. They're living the life. And while none of us have an easy or perfect life. I mean, at the end of the day, life is, has full of challenges every single day. But for those of us who have now had some experience in it, to be able to relay those things to the students and to give them some things to think about, and maybe share some of the lessons that we've learned over time. Because clearly, again, working with your spouse, there are some things, there was definitely some to-dos and do not do's that I would want to share with them. But I was impressed with the depth of their questions. I was impressed with their interest in, that finding the right spouse topic, and just, gosh, where do I begin? I do honestly think in some ways it wasn't something that when Deborah and I were young, I don't think we thought about in the same way. And what I mean by that is it seemed to be just a natural course of action.
Something's changed in the culture.
Yes. Something's changed in the culture where for them there's so much question about how.
Or if, I think, too.
Yes.
Is it okay to get married? Am I costing myself professional success? I don't know about you, Rob. I remember a lot of questions, and you were the one who's available today, but that night, Deb got a ton of those questions.
She did.
Especially from ladies.
Yes.
Of, is it okay? Am I foreclosing on the responsibility that people fought for me in this country for decades?
That's right.
By being married, and especially by having children.
Yes.
So I think you're right. There's a thing that's changed even since I was a student. I'm a little younger than you are. Not just how, but if is a big question. Mm-hmm. Is it okay?
Yes.
To have a family, or am I betraying my success or my identity or whatever?
I think that's absolutely true. And I wonder too how much of it is there's probably very few young people who, whether they've experienced it personally or they've seen it in their friend group, have seen maybe unhealthy marriages, unhealthy relationships, and maybe whether that unhealthy parental-children relationships and say, wow, there seems to be a level of chaos and uncertainty and uncomfortableness, and what kind of risk am I signing up for here,
Yes.
right? Mm-hmm. And I think part of our message was, you can't be afraid to live life. We are called. If you're a believer, you're called. Not everybody's called to marriage, right? So fair enough. Not everybody is.
Well, you're Catholic. You have to believe that not everyone's called to marriage.
We do have to.
Where would you get priests otherwise?
We'd be in deep trouble.
Hard enough to find them anyway.
For sure. So, but if you think you might be called to marriage, is it worth the risk? Mm-hmm. And I mean, my message, of course, is now. Yes. Did I luck out in the wife lottery? Perhaps. Having said that, for both of us, it's an awful lot of work. It always is. But is it worth it? Yeah, man, it's worth it. When you build, I mean, the nuclear family is the critical component of our society. Mm-hmm. It's the most foundational piece of it. It doesn't mean every single person needs to get married and have a family, but we sure need a lot of people to do that, or we don't have a culture, or we don't have a society, we don't have a country. Mm. So I think now, does that feel like a lot of pressure for a young person? Like, oh my gosh, all that responsibility. Look, it's
my job to ensure society continues. Rob Shearer said so.
Oh, maybe there we go. But there's a beauty in this too. Mm-hmm. There's a beauty and a joy that comes. The first time your 4-year-old says something to you that just totally surprises you, and there's something amazing about all that. And if we hadn't taken that risk, we wouldn't have those experiences.
Yeah, beautiful. Another thing you brought up with the students and a few minutes ago, Rob, is the fact that you and Deb are co-founders of a school, St. Joseph's Catholic Academy in Boalsburg, Pennsylvania. Many people who know me through ODC don't know we have that in common. My wife and I are also school founders. Right. Our reflection, Carissa's and my reflection would be, it's one of the most rewarding, but also one of the hardest things we've ever done. Yep. One of the conversations I remember ensuing from this little subtopic when you and Deb were at Bucknell was, okay, business, people are in college, they know they got to work, they know they got to get a job. Some want to have a family. Some are people of faith. You said as an outgrowth of some of those big things, it's very important to you and Deb to be involved in civil society, to be philanthropic. Absolutely. That's what you've done through St. Joe's. I would say, spending a lot of time on college campuses these days, that's not a common message either. Mm. If I had a nickel for every question I'm asked about, how do I get the job I want? Right? I mean, that is in the water, right? That's what they're drinking deeply from. And look, I'm in favor of being able to provide for yourself, right? I'm not criticizing that. But no one has ever asked me, why is it important that I'm involved in civil society? Why is it important that I'm philanthropic? Well, yeah. I know that's important to you. So let's start with why. Why is that important to you and Deb? And then let's get into how did that play with the students.
Yeah. So I think one of the areas we started with was just this general concept that one of the things that makes our culture really healthy and strong is the health of the mediating institutions. The schools and the churches and the hospitals and the private societies. Maybe they're charitable. They do charitable work, or they're serving some real purpose that's important to the community. So often in our news, we get focused on things that are happening in the globe or at the federal level. And it's so easy to forget that what happens at the local level, starting in your own house, to your own local community, to your county, those things are really, really important too. And they impact the quality of life for everybody in that community. So, and here's the thing, and I think you could say this about your schools, you could say this about your church, you could say this about any of those mediating institutions. It's really not healthy when the majority of people have a bit of a consumerist attitude about it. I'm going to go to church today, and I sure hope the pastor has something good to say, or else I'm out of here, you know. Or you know, my goodness, I really don't like the way Mrs. Jones is approaching history this year. And okay, that's a fair criticism. But, you know, at the end of the day, are you a consumer or are you a contributor? And because, you know, I remember reading a study, gosh, this might have even been 15 years ago, but there was a man named Matthew Kelly who was his firm was actually hired to figure out why these churches weren't healthy, either in their enrollment, their bottom line, the whole thing. What was going on? And one of the things he found is that somewhere between 1% and 2% of the people who were members of that organization actually participated in the fostering of the organization, in the building of it, in the support of it. Everybody else was a consumer. And so the book that I read about him was all about, if you want healthy organizations, more people need to own it. You have to have skin in the game. You have to be owning it in order to care about it. Again, are you going to a store just to buy something, or are you trying to build something? Are you willing to be part of that solution? And I think to our students, like what I would say to them is, we live in a consumerist culture. So it's very easy for that mindset to be, well, you know, I expect this from my teachers. I expect this from the hospital. I expect this from the, you know, okay, you expect all those things. What are you willing to contribute to make sure those things happen? Are you willing to be part of it? You know, are you willing to run part of this? I think a small, tiny group of people can't lead every organization. So ultimately, we're healthier when you own it, you have skin in the game, and you feel like you're part of it.
Yeah, that's the mindset we need, and I certainly have seen that mindset in you and Deb for many years.
Apply that to say current affairs. You know, apply that to you know, we're seeing all over the world people in Western countries waking up a little bit and saying, hey, you know what, our government hasn't really been responsive to us. We the people are concerned and worried and maybe even a little upset about how our money's been wasted, about the kinds of things that you're using my money for. And that's why in this country, we're very blessed to be able to do something about that because we have a vote. There's lots of places where they can't. But also, it's not just about what our federal government does. Recognize that some of those things happen right here at the local level. You know, our mayor, our county commissioner, any of these people have some impact. Our local representative, they're there for a reason. You know, and you can be impactful on those things. In fact, you have a responsibility to do so. Yeah,
I love that you said that, Rob, because I mean, I've watched that even in you. I think it'd be fair to say that we've exchanged some text messages over the years about various federal issues. But I know here in Center County, Pennsylvania, where we're sitting, you have really not just said what you just said into a microphone, but really invested yourself. Most people don't do that. We are, by the way, trying to inculcate that mindset through ODC. We have a new series run by your predecessor on this podcast focused on civic leadership, encouraging people to get involved in their own backyards. Because to your point, you can actually make a much bigger difference in your community than you can. I mean, I used to say, I'm dating myself now, yelling at the television. Now I guess we don't yell at the television, we doom scroll, you know, but whatever, you know, whatever it is. I think that's such a healthy instinct. And, you know, separate and apart from politics or anything like that, I would say our mediating institutions have not done a good job in recent decades inculcating that mindset that we need young people to aspire to, for example, own our civil society institutions, be involved in their communities. I don't know if it was like this for you and Deb when you were going to school, but especially at a place like Bucknell, where you've got a primarily coastal kind of mindset. Kids come from the coasts. When they're done, they want to go to New York or San Francisco, usually somewhere like that. I'm the weirdo. You know, I ended up in central Pennsylvania. And it's fine, I think, to want to do something on the big stage, to work for a name brand institute. Fine. But there's something really good and really beautiful about, from my perspective, what you've shared. Not just building something that isn't a name brand but does really cool stuff like moving F-16s. But doing the work in your community that, you know what, nobody 1,000 miles from you is ever going to know about St. Joseph's Catholic Academy. But you've gotten so much, and your community's gotten so much from that. Nobody in the next county is going to pay a lot of attention to.
Let's talk a little bit about the impact.
Yeah.
But by taking care of your own home, your own hometown.
Yeah.
What's the impact? Well, let me use St. Joe's in the 13 years that we've been having graduates. I don't know. We've had 250, 300 graduates. All right. So we're a small school. But the things that those 250 graduates are doing are impacting, yes, this community, but certainly far beyond this community.
Yes.
Our kids have gone to an amazing variety of universities, colleges, technical schools, military academies, and the impact they're now having that they're coming into leadership roles is really impressive. And the fact that they are the kinds of people that they have been as well formed as they've been, our 4 pillars of the school are faith, leadership, scholarship, and service. And so among those 4 things, those young people, when they lead whatever organization they're going to lead, they're going to be really so much better at it because they've been grown to they've learned to be well balanced from the beginning, and they understand the criticality of those things, and they've got the firm faith foundation. They've done well academically. They've learned to lead. They've learned to speak. They've learned to respect themselves and their community, and they've learned to give back. And that giving back part is, we've all got something to give. What good does it do if I sit on my couch and complain? No, get out there and do something. Do something about it. If you don't think the quality of people you had to vote for was good enough, change that. Get involved to do it. You don't have to be in the spotlight, but make a difference. I think our school over the next 100 years is going to make a tremendous difference do a little part in this country to make a difference.
There's so much I love about that, Rob, and I'll just give one reflection on it that I can't resist because of current events. There's been a lot said at this point in history, as is proper, about Charlie Kirk, who was recently assassinated for engaging in open discourse on a college campus. And I think we've all heard stories of the impact that he's had on people's lives, usually through a screen. Usually, I hear college students say, I watched him on Instagram, right? I'm saying nothing against him, nothing at all against him. And I think, by the way, some of the reasons why students watched what he had to say was the same reason they came to see you and Deb at Bucknell, right, is because he openly spoke about some of the topics that you are openly speaking about. Right. And many people don't want to do that in today's society. Having said that, though, the big difference, there's a similarity, right? But the big difference is, when you describe what you've done with St. Joe's, you're tending your vineyard here in your community. Mm-hmm. You are making an impact not on social media, but in person in people's lives. Again, I'm not criticizing people who are social media influencers. I guess that there's a need for that. But even that is something that gets sort of vaunted. What doesn't get vaunted, especially at a university like Bucknell, not because of the administration. That's not about that. I just mean in our culture, being a social media influencer is a sort of vaunted thing. Tending your vineyard in a community is a non-vaunted thing. Mm-hmm. But wow, what an impact when you can say, I know those kids. I met with those kids. I went to chapel with those kids. I know their parents. And now look what they're doing. It's a beautiful and fulfilling thing, I think, to be able to have that kind of legacy. And I've experienced it now with you a little bit. As you know, one of the most recent graduates of your school went to Bucknell and this past summer worked at ODC. Yeah. It's a different thing. Here's what I'm driving at, right? There's some similarities between the two lines of making an impact that we're talking about. But what a powerful thing to know those people and then see the impact that they're making on the world.
Yeah. I'm reminded of what we often say, we see it in our business, we see it in our school, we see it in our community. You never know really the impact that you have when you engage in the civic, you have the civic engagement, when you take the time, and I'm just going to give you an example. My father passed away a few years ago, and as a guy who also was in my business for a long time, worked long, crazy hours, rarely found the time when I was young. He wasn't always able to volunteer and do a lot of things. But you know what he did do? He made the time to be our basketball coach when we were in middle school. And it was actually a lot of fun. It was fun to do that with Dad. And but it was something he did for a few years. And then once we all left the school, he didn't do it anymore. But after he passed away, about a month later, my mother got a letter from a young man who now is 30-something years old, lived in Texas, heard that Dad had passed. And he sent this beautiful letter to my mother about the impact my father had on his life, just because he was the guy that would take the time to, and I don't know what was going on in his family at the time, but Dad was a real mentor to him. I never knew that. Mom never knew that. I don't know how many people ever did. And I don't know that my dad ever knew the small little impact he had. You plant a little seed. 20 years later, what have you produced? It could be amazing.
Yeah. It's part of a joyful and fulfilling life, and it's not talked about enough. Yeah. Rob, we could go on for quite a while. I'm afraid, though, that you and Deb may have some really sensitive medical equipment to move, so I won't keep you here with me all day. But I do want to ask you 3 more questions that I ask everyone who appears on this podcast. And a slight lead into the first one. You are so passionate about these kinds of conversations happening that you actually have made this podcast possible. You have sponsored the first year of it. I'm here able to do it because of you. And I'm so grateful to you for that. Sure. So with that as an intro, why are you so passionate about this mission of Open Discourse?
Yeah. I think that the free exchange of ideas, and I mean unfettered, right, is crucial to the health of any civilization. We see throughout history evidence of what happens when the opposite is true, right? There's a reason that the United States has become the country it's become, in a lot of good ways. We've raised more people out of poverty in this country than has happened in most parts of the world, right? And that does not happen in a tyrannical regime where speech is limited. And it certainly doesn't happen. People don't thrive when they can't inquire and study and learn and make mistakes and pick themselves up again and do it again. I think the ability to share powerful ideas freely is what separates a healthy society from an unhealthy society. And we've seen there's far too many voices today calling for censorship of this message or that message, which is really insane. You know what? If I want to hear people I disagree with, because then I know I can ascertain whether that idea makes sense or it doesn't make sense. But if I never hear them have to defend it, if it's just accepted and forced down from above, how do I really know if that's right or wrong? Bounce it up against my moral center and figure out whether that makes any sense. And here's the other thing. If you never are able to have a free exchange of ideas, a lot of pollutants can get into your water. You know what I mean? And that is free speech is required. And so that's why I'm passionate about this. More speech, not less speech. More variety, not less variety. Yes, it'd be great if everything out there in the digital universe was perfectly well formed and of high quality, but that's not the way this works. Because at the end of the day, you still have to have a conversation with your neighbor and that guy that sits next to you in church and that guy you ran to in the grocery store. And if we can't have these kind of conversations, how can you have those really well? I just don't think you can. I don't think you have a healthy community.
Thank you for making our community more healthy, Rob.
Yeah, man.
2 more questions.
All right.
What's the most interesting book you're reading right now?
I am reading a book called Song for Nagasaki. And it is, believe it or not, I got there through the Hallow app. I got there through some stories leading up to Easter. And but it's a song of Hakashi Nagai, who was a physician in Nagasaki and treated people after the bomb was dropped. But it's also about his whole life and family's life leading up to this. And there's so many. It's got a historical. Well, the reason I'm interested in it, it's got an amazing historical background in which all of this occurs, but it's ultimately about this group of Christians that lived in Nagasaki for 500 years, from the time the Jesuits got there to the time, and went through tremendous persecutions. Anyway, he eventually converted to Christianity, became and it was so there's a big spiritual piece of this book. But can you imagine? And for 300 years, they had to be a hidden church because of the emperor didn't think that Christianity had any place in their country, but they kept it alive for 300 years till 300 years later a priest showed up again. So astonishing and amazing, but also about this family that survived this horrific mess, and he was a doctor who helped a lot of people post this and even died of the radiation eventually. So anyway, that's what I'm reading right now. It's an awesome book. I'd highly recommend it.
Wow. All right, last one. Who's your favorite world historical figure?
Yeah, and I had a feeling you might ask me that, and I have a hard time picking one. I will say, because I love American history, Thomas Jefferson is a guy I'd love to buy him a beer and have a conversation. I think that would be fascinating.
At the tavern in Boalsburg?
That would be extraordinary. And I hope you don't mind, but I do want to throw a spiritual mentor in there that I know you share this with me. I think Dietrich Bonhoeffer is another fascinating character that I'd love to have a conversation with. Of course, everybody, would I love to have a conversation with Jesus Christ or St. Peter? Oh, sure. But those are some guys that I feel have some real relevance to kind of what's going on in our world today. And I think it'd be fascinating to get their perspective.
Love it. Rob Shearer, thank you for appearing on the Open Discourse Coalition podcast, and thank you for making it possible.
It's my honor, Charles. Thank you, buddy.